Greetings, YouTube. The following quote is from a discussion of rape culture. I'm a hetero white cis man working to make the space I have in the world and make it feminist. I know that it should be rapist's responsibility not to rape instead of survivor's responsibility not to get raped. And I know by virtue of being a dude who doesn't talk to other dudes about rape, I am complicit in rape culture. But I just have no idea where to begin. Can you talk to me about talking to rapists about rape? And there's another pull quote here in the first comment on this article. The notion that in order for rape to occur, the rapist must have rapist intents is garbage folly, because rape has absolutely nothing to do with a perpetrator's intentions and everything to do with the lack of consent. Just because a perpetrator doesn't mean harm, it doesn't mean they meant well. I'm reminded of a quote from Louis C.K. where he says, when someone tells you that you've hurt them, you don't get to tell them that you didn't. That just because someone doesn't intend to rape doesn't mean that they don't rape people. And consent must be enthusiastic and continuing. It must be a complete and utter buy-in. There can't be any, or shouldn't be any ambiguity about it. It's best to talk about these things. Yes, I know that some people will consider that to be a mood breaker. Too bad. Consent and disassembling our rape culture is far more important than potentially harshing your mood the first or few times that you've had sex with someone, until you can establish what the signs and the language is for you and your partner when it comes to consent. Because just because you've had sex with someone 100 times, 1,000 times, doesn't mean you have to just assume that consent is it's implied. It must be explicit. Of course, then there's also the, well, she's had sex before. It doesn't matter how many times someone's had sex. Could be 1 billion partners for all you care. Just because someone has sex doesn't mean that they're going to have sex with you. There's a great line in a scene in the movie The Great Race. Cody Curtis, Natalie Wood. It's a G-rated 1965 film. But in it, she's been pushing a feminist agenda, or a proto-feminist agenda, seeing as it takes place in the first decade of the 20th century. And she's been trying to convince this bit of a rake that as an emancipated woman, and he is an emancipated man, that they can talk about things in a frank and open manner. And he's just not having the whole scene. He's a traditional. He's a social conservative. Men pursue women, women succumb. And finally, he says to her, you know, you're right. You are an emancipated woman, and I'm an emancipated man. And then he goes in for a kiss, and she slaps him. And he's completely confused by this. He said the magic words. He said, open sesame. Why did the gates of paradise not open? Well, just because she said it's all right for a man and a woman to have sex on their own terms doesn't mean she wants to have sex with you. Or wants to have sex with you at that moment without consent. Because he didn't ask before kissing her. And I can tell you right now that when it came to learning about relationships between men and women, which is, again, heteronormative. I understand this. I apologize. I was never involved in relationships other than that, at least not consensually. And I never learned about consent. The word consent in relationship to human sexuality did not hit my radar until my 30s. It just wasn't something I had to worry about. And that was because I was complicit in rape culture. I was part of the problem because I did not ask for specifics. Because I was willing to play that game, and it isn't a game. This is human lives, human spirits. You can scar someone for a very long time, maybe forever. And your desire to get laid doesn't matter at all. And that's one of the reasons I think that so many misogynists have a problem with a lot of feminism, because it isn't just that women are seeking for equality in social, political, and fiscal level, economic levels. It's that they're saying that, okay, this is what we are, this is who we are, this is the system that we want to establish, and it involves consent, and it involves with being free to have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want, so long as you have consent. And some of the misogynists are kind of okay with that. Of course, if women actually have sex with them or anyone else, then they're sluts. But there's a reason the misogynists are morally reprehensible. But if misogynists say the magic words, the gates of heaven don't open. And it never occurs to them that someone doesn't want to have sex with them, not because they haven't mouthed the magic words, but because they're repugnant. Because they're not feminists. Because they don't understand consent. And all they're looking to do is get laid. And anything that impedes their access, unrestricted access to the sexuality of women, is seen as a negative. So they get all up in arms about feminism. Oh, it's a horrible, horrible problem to our society today. And people who say that feminism has ruined relationships are saying that they perceive feminism as having ruined their access to sex. And it never occurs to them that the reason they're not getting laid is them and not feminism. And all of these things are rolled into a big ball of crap that we call the rape culture. And it's horrible. We don't teach about consent properly. And we're specifically not teaching men about rape culture and consent properly. And please, in the comments below, don't talk about women raping men. I know it happens. I'm not discussing that here. I know that's a hard thing to swallow. I know you really desperately want to type those words and tell me how I am wrong. And it's a whole lot easier to yell and scream at me than face the reality that you might be complicit in rape culture, or that you don't have a working understanding of consent. And I'm telling you right now, don't use theft analogies. If you compare a human being to having a home broken into or a car stolen, depending on my mood, you just may go away forever. Because those kinds of comparisons are disgusting. Let's talk about this. How do we communicate to men in a way that they understand consent and understand rape and understand rape culture in general? How do we do that? This is all part of my desire to tear down the patriarchy, of course. Something that a lot of men don't believe exists, which is bull as well. Which probably makes them loyal soldiers in the patriarchy's cause. So let's have a conversation about how do we communicate this to men? How do we get across to them how important it is to understand consent and understand that a rapist does not have to intend rape to commit rape? And there's the thing. Just because someone doesn't intend evil doesn't mean they don't commit evil. And we need to talk about that, and we need to break it down, and we need to find ways of eliminating it. So I'm looking for constructive work in that direction. And if anyone can lend a hand, it would greatly be appreciated.